Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, the V-Team takes a look at the reorganizational session of the House and Senate. Also, we examine why Luther Strange continues to attack the Porch Creek Indians on bingo. And Mike Hubbard was reelected Speaker by an overwhelming majority. Give me freedom or give me death? This bunch wouldn't take a paper cut for freedom. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V.
The Voice of Alabama Politics with your host, Bill Brett, and the V-Team with Claire Austin, Susan Britt, Jack Campbell, Baron Coleman, Charlana Spencer, and special reports with Jonathan Barbie. Now, the #1 political show in Alabama, The V.
Welcome to the Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by the V-Team. Welcome all.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This past Tuesday, 99 members of the Alabama House of Representatives elected Mike Hubbard Speaker one more time. This is a man who has been charged by the state with 23 felony counts of public corruption. What were they thinking, Baron?
I don't know. It's not often that I walk away from a day in the Alabama legislature and think, you know, Alvin Holmes is the guy today who I think was the most reasonable member of the Alabama House. I think it's probably the first time I've ever uttered those words was after Tuesday's vote. Alvin Holmes voted against Mike Hubbard. 99 other people voted in favor of him, and I guess a few people abstained or weren't there or whatever. But I'll tell you what they were thinking. They were scared to death. They feared for their political lives. They feared for their, I don't know, health and safety. I think that might be a little saying too much, but it's obviously fear, threats, intimidation. It's not the way it should be, and it's Alabama's shame that we have elected through our representatives a man who is under indictment for felony public corruption.
Well, I'll have to say for the members that did vote for him, you know, just like you mentioned, they're scared to not vote for him. He controls all the chairmanships, all the committee chairs that people sit on, and these freshman members or these folks that were elected 4 years ago, they're scared not to get on a committee and do this and that. And I understand where they came from.
You know, and I understand that too, but that to me is a moral failing. The scriptures teach us what profits a man if he gains the whole world and loses his soul. I mean, these people have sold out as far as I'm concerned. What did you see there that day?
I saw, you know, basically another pep rally for Mike Hubbard. It was very disturbing. I mean, even the Democrats voted for him. They didn't even bother to abstain. Not one member of the House abstained or, you know, bothered to be absent.
Well, I will say, I talked to several Democrats later that day, and they basically said, we didn't have a candidate to run, and we were scared not to vote for him because if we didn't, we would be ripped off committees.
But this is like a dictatorship.
It reminds me of Saddam Hussein or whoever, whatever Kim is running North Korea these days, Kim Jong-un. This is how they run elections. They terrify people. If you vote against them, they put your family in prison, or they do worse. This is what it's like. It is absolutely insane. I cannot believe it. I hope every single one of them has the gumption to resign if he's convicted. That's all I can say. And I'll say one more thing about it. I notice the public defense has changed. It used to be the members would sit back and say, well, he's innocent until proven guilty. Well, then you confront him with something like, well, so's a child molester. Do you want him babysitting your kids?
Exactly.
And they say, well, no. Now they're coming out. They've totally switched gears, and they're saying, no, he's innocent. This is a political prosecution. He's done nothing wrong. He's a good, honorable, nice, wonderful man. This is what they were saying on the House floor. He's one of the most honorable people they've ever known.
Well, how can you say that when you have a Republican Attorney General that did the prosecution?
Well, if he's the most honorable person they know, they need to meet a few new people, don't you think, Susan?
I do, and I hope not the Democrats, but I hope the people that voted for him don't think that we're going to forget in 4 years when this comes back around again and they're looking for re-election. People are angry about this.
Well, also some members said to me, you know, Claire, I've served here before, And I had a very adversarial relationship with the speaker at that time. I do not want to have an adversarial relationship with the speaker.
What, you think he's going to change just because they voted for him? I mean, really? You think that's going to matter that much?
Well, he'll be nice to those people that are Republicans that voted for him, and he'll give them the chairmanships or the committee assignments they like.
As long as they continue to keep him happy.
Well, that's probably
like
true.
an abusive husband, though. You know what I mean? I got to tell you, personally for me, I would rather take a whip than sell my soul for that cheap.
It's like a cheap prostitute. They sit there and they hope they get paid and not beat up. And these guys are no better than cheap prostitutes.
Well, it's been shocking to me. I mean, I knew it was coming, but I thought that at least the Democrats would do at least some kind of posturing that they disapproved of this kind of criminal activity.
I believe Alvin Holmes came out yesterday and said he could not, in his good conscience, vote for a criminal.
Well,
I think a lot of the other Democrats and a lot of people are they're also taking this approach. We're going to sit back, wait and see, because a lot of people think something is going to happen in this whole investigation, prosecution, and when the trial starts sometime end of session or after session or something. I think a lot of people are just having that approach.
Well, to me, I guess I wouldn't make a good politician because I just wouldn't compromise like that. I'd rather be sitting in the corner by myself than sit there and betray my conscience to get ahead that much.
Okay, well, I'm not arguing with y'all. I'm just laying the facts out and I'm telling you the reality of what it is like at the State House. Well, I am too, but I do other things like make a living there, so I have to consider all that.
Look, there's some good people. I think they made bad decisions. That's what I think. Dale Marsh, surprisingly, was reelected President Pro Tem. Susan, you were there for
I was there. It was unanimous, 34-0. There was one member missing yesterday, but it was, as he said, overwhelmingly bipartisan, which is what he's looking for in the Senate this time. And he tends to want to be bipartisan when he's dealing in the Senate. So it was kind of not, well, it wasn't surprising at all, actually.
No. I mean, Dale has been a good leader. He is a good leader. He's a good manager. He's a good person and been very successful in his own right. And he knows how to lead a group of people together, and I think it was without any question.
The thing that most impresses me about him is that he knows how to work across the aisle.
Absolutely.
He's always willing to work across the aisle, and if you're sitting in the press box and you watch him, you see a lot that you can't see in the gallery, where he's really, really working hard to get these senators on both sides to agree.
And that's what you need in any kind of legislative body, whether it's in the Alabama House or the Alabama Senate or in Congress. You need a leader that's willing to work on both sides of the aisle to bring forward what's best for the state of Alabama.
We got about a minute. One of the new things that developed was that Senator Greg Reed was elected majority leader. Barron, I think he's going to be the face of the Republican supermajority for the next 4 years.
I like Greg Reed. I think he's smart. He's well-spoken. He's seems to get along with just about everybody. I don't know anybody who is Greg Reed's enemy. I mean, it's a very fresh face in leadership. I think he's only in his second term. He's a good guy. I wish him well, and if that's the path the Senate is taking, they're in good hands.
Well, he's a good-looking guy. He's always impeccably dressed and looks sharp, and he's a singer. He's a gospel singer.
He is. And in the 3 years I've been working in the Senate, I have never caught him go back on his word, never caught him in a lie. I've sat in multiple committees, sat in the chambers multiple times, and he is always straight to the point.
Yeah, he's a very principled person, and I've known him for
is.
years because I had served on the state executive committee, and he was a vice president there, and he'll do a great job.
We're going to have to hold it right there. You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back with more news and analysis.
The V is sponsored by Spot On Strategies Group.
I teach. I touch the future. I am AEA.
I keep the school clean every day for your children. I am AEA.
Congratulations on your scholarship. I help children make choices for college and careers. I am AEA.
We are AEA.
Welcome to Alabama's newest entertainment destination, Wind Creek Wetumpka, the perfect escape for date night, a getaway with your friends, or a relaxing poolside cocktail. Whether it's a day trip to enjoy the best steak in Alabama or a romantic weekend, the finest Southern hospitality is just a short drive away. Wind Creek Wetumpka. Find your winning moment.
Welcome back to the Voice of Alabama Politics. We're joined by Jack Campbell. Hey, Jack.
Good morning.
Good
How's
morning,
everybody?
Jackson. We're glad to have
Clarine,
you.
always a pleasure. Barron?
Yeah.
Now, you and Barron have a radio show together. Y'all are together every day almost for 12, from 9 till 12, right?
9 to noon every day.
9 to noon. How do you stand it?
It gets tougher every day.
What is it? Rodney Dangerfield said it ain't easy being me. I'll tell you.
What are the call letters of the show, and how can people get it online?
It's News Talk 93.1 FM WACV here in Montgomery. Got a pretty good signal. Covers most of Central Alabama. If you want it online, you can get on TuneIn Radio app and go to 93.1 FM in Montgomery, or there's a WACV app you can download and catch us during the week. It's a little more laid back than this.
Yeah, we listen to it almost every day. It's a great show. Y'all do a great job. And it covers a variety of topics, and it's never boring.
Well, thank you.
Not with those two.
No. A recent poll by the McLaughlin Group, of McLaughlin Associates, shows that people in Alabama, they love school choice and they hate the AEA. Jack, you've got a lot of years of familiarity with polls. What do you think of that?
I like Jimmy McLaughlin. He's a good guy, but he has been a long-time vendor for the Alabama Republican Party and Mike Hubbard and Del Marsh. I haven't seen how the questions were asked, but I would be surprised if this were totally accurate.
Yeah.
Maybe a little home cook. I mean, I know Jimmy. I've worked with him and have hired him in the past. But you're right. I mean, we all know, we all have done politics and we've run polls. It's all about how you ask the question and how you line them up.
Well, you can ask people about school choice and they'll say, yeah, we want school choice. That's pretty obvious. But if you ask them, do they like this Accountability Act, that's not gone over that well.
Well, again, it depends on how you ask it. The easiest polling to do in the world is polling that you'll never know the answer to.
Right.
Because if you do polling on who's going to win the presidential election or who are you voting for, and it's 54-46 and it comes out to be 50-50, well, you were off 4 points.
Right.
On a poll like this, do you like a particular political issue? There's no voting day where that's going to come to pass. You'll never know the true answer. They can say whatever they want. You can word the questions, you can massage the numbers, you can weight the samples funny, then you can make it look and say just about anything you want it to say. And there's no day of reckoning.
So this is really more like political.
This is
PR.
messaging. Yeah, this is like
exactly.
advertising.
It is, because think about it. AEA is just another trade association. The teachers in the public schools are not all members of AEA.
No.
So public education and AEA are not really one and the same because not everybody's a member.
Right. Well, I think we're going to see more school choice. I think Senator Marsh has made that clear. Senator Brubaker is backing charter schools. I think that Governor Bentley, from what we're hearing, might sign on to a pilot program, but isn't really for like putting in 50 charter schools or anything.
Well, if you're going to have charter schools, put in a few. Make sure there's a rule that nobody gets rich off of it. I think that's most people's main problem with the way charter schools are run around the country. Somebody gets rich out of the deal. If you're going to take public money and put it into private education, you need to make sure no one's profiting because that's tax money.
Right. And that's the Tea Party people have a lot of problems with that, don't they, Jack?
Yeah, they do. They really do. They don't cotton to that at all. And understandably, I mean, just what Barron said, we know that only a few people are going to benefit from the implementation of charter schools.
They need to address that in legislation, how they set up charter schools. I mean, I think charter schools are a wave of the future. I mean, I know a lot of friends, kids in other states where they use them, and I'm supportive of the issue if that's what they want. But it's how it's set up. Just like setting up a lottery. You got to set up the charter schools the same, and do it the right way.
You go to places like New Orleans, there are no public schools anymore in New Orleans. It's all. But they've got, not all of them have a great track record.
Some of them, there's some great success stories in some inner cities around the country.
Right.
But by and large, they have really not proven to be the end all and to public education woes.
Well, I just don't like the idea of taxpayer money going to a corporation that's owned by Wall Street billionaires. I mean, that's what bothers me. But It is what it is.
Or Alabama millionaire.
Alabama millionaires. Speaking of Alabama millionaires, a lot of the Porch Creek Indians have some pretty good income off of the investments of the tribe. The Porch Creek used to be one of the poorest, smallest bands of Native Americans in our country, and they have thrived since they started having bingo. I've been down there, I've toured it, they're an advertiser on our show, but they just do a great job. However, Attorney General Luther Strange feels that they are operating bingo illegally. Once again, Barron, he's taking them to federal court. What do you think?
Well, he got smacked down pretty well by the trial judge, a Republican appointee, Judge Watkins, who basically said, look, I understand your frustration, but there's nothing that can be done. They're on federally protected land. It's sovereign. It'd be like going into Canada and telling them how to run their country. There's just not much you can do on an Indian reservation as far as enforcing Alabama law. There are some exceptions to that, but not what you're wanting to do. That's been appealed. They had a hearing this week at federal court in Atlanta. We'll see what the judges think about that. Maybe they'll put some restrictions on it, or maybe they'll kind of second what Keith Watkins said, Judge Watkins, that there's not much you can do on federal land. The bottom line is this war on bingo, private land, Indian land, it's persisting. It's not going away. There was a memo recently where Attorney General Strange kind of said, look, you know, we're not going to be taking as lead or as active of a role. We want some of you guys to pick up the slack. I don't know if some of that was related back to Sonny Reagan leaving the office.
Yeah, well, Sonny was the main prosecutor on gambling. But why do you think, I mean, is this just leftover, Claire, or do you think Big Luther wants to get out of this prosecution? Do you think that's the case?
I really just don't know the issue that well as far as what's going on in the Attorney General's office. I think that he probably would like to remove himself from it. I agree with Barron as far as the judge ruling in sovereign land and private land. I mean, they're not going to be able to take this away from the Indians.
Jack, I mean, it's a hot button issue. Bill Armistead came out and talked about how terrible gambling was.
Well, like anybody cares what he thinks.
Well,
really, he's the most insignificant man in Alabama.
Well, speaking of that, I thought it was quite interesting. He came out, made this big statement, but he's always taking their money when it came to fundraising.
He sure has always taken their money.
That's very hypocritical.
Well, all this is just Luther beating his chest to appease Bob Riley early on when he was a candidate in 2010. I think it's a little hangover from that. I think he kind of sees that the water's a little tepid and he might not want to get in it again. Yeah. So he's telling local guys, well, if you guys want to go after him, go ahead, but we're not going to take as active of a role.
Well, this may be one of those occasions where it's, hey, Luther, leave them kids alone. Anyway, we're going to have to hold it right there. You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back with a whole lot more.
The V is sponsored by MediaWorks Communications, quality video production and marketing services. The Locker Room, fine men's clothing.
I make sure to get your kids to school and home safe every day. I am AEA.
I make sure your child receives a healthy meal each day. I am AEA.
Thank you, AEA, for protecting our public schools and our futures. We are AEA.
Welcome to Alabama's newest entertainment destination, Wind Creek Wetumpka, the perfect escape for date night, a getaway with your friends, or a relaxing poolside cocktail. Whether it's a day trip to enjoy the best steak in Alabama or a romantic weekend, the finest Southern hospitality is just a short drive away. Wind Creek Wetumpka. Find your winning moment.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. We learned some interesting things over the last 2 weeks with letters released in a motion by the prosecution in the Mike Hubbard case. One thing we learned is that Mark White did know that his client Mike Hubbard was under investigation by the Lee County grand jury when he took him on. Yet he pretended that he was investigating you and me and anybody else. We also learned that in his first letter, Mark White's first letter to Van Davis on September 13th, 2013, he complained of grand jury leaks even before the first witness appeared before the grand jury. We learned a lot about Mark White in the last 2 weeks, haven't we?
Yeah, you could have asked me that a while back, but you know, Mark's a great spinmeister. You have to give him credit for waging a pretty good PR battle for the speaker. I don't know what he's like in a courtroom, but he sure beats his chest and has a lot of fluff out in front of the trial. But that was not truthful what he did. To say that, you know, they're only looking into libelous things about the speaker.
Right, right.
Well,
which was not true.
I mean, in addition to Mark White being the PR spinster, I mean, everybody knows that the speaker also has a hired gun PR lobbying firm, which is telling Mark White nowadays, or at least the last 6 months, what to do and how to portray things in the media.
Well, Baron, I know you, like me, found that filing pretty interesting because we're named in it, or we're mentioned.
Yeah, and what was said about me was a flat-out lie, and they're aware of it. They know it's a lie. The fact that they filed that with a court and just flat-out lied about what they said about me in particular, and I don't even know about the rest of it, they have no credibility.
That's
None.
egregious, I would say.
It's beyond egregious. It's illegal and unlawful.
Yeah.
And it'll be dealt with at some point.
Well, I found it interesting that they talk about leaks and leaks and leaks and leaks. And of course, they use this show as an example of a leak. They used AO Reporter as an example of a leak. But yet, we didn't get any leaks.
I was going to say, if it was leaked, how come we didn't know all this that we just found out within the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
it's amazing, though, but that spin, it goes back to your point before. They're saying now that, oh, well, he won't be convicted. That spin has got people believing that. But I also take the position that they used to say he'd never be indicted. Mm-hmm. He did get indicted. I mean, what do you make of a defense that's based around prosecutorial misconduct? And that's really where they're going, aren't they?
It is. When everything's against you, when your conduct is, as you say, egregious, when the law is clear and you brag about how it's the toughest ethics law in the country, and it's pretty clear on its face, it looks like it was violated, whether, you know, a court will decide that, you're really left with very few arguments. One is things are being done improperly. I'm a victim. This is political. Anytime they're not trying to say my conduct was lawful, what I did was lawful, right, you know their backs are against the wall and they have nothing else to argue, including filing papers with a court with flat-out, bald-faced lies in it that they know are lies.
Well, they're grasping at straws.
Yeah.
Well, the prosecutorial misconduct was a guy in the prosecutor's office who was leaking information to the defense team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it wasn't done to benefit the prosecution.
Well, the only leaks we ever have heard about, or there's any proof of as far as that we hear, is the leaks that were by Sonny Reagan.
Who is no longer employed in the AG's office.
Right, because they let him go because they said he was leaking
well,
to the defense.
Everybody I know that I've talked to about this would be willing to undergo any kind of examination possible to prove I never got a leak from anybody a day in my life. You know, the things that were said were just flat out not true. Very frustrating. They go after your integrity. And when they do that, and I understand the guy's fighting for his life, his political career, and frankly, his freedom. I get that. I understand why he's doing it, but he needs to do it honestly.
Well, and that's the problem I've had along with. When Mark White, first announced that he was Hubbard's attorney, he talked about how he was going after those that slandered Mike, that libeled Mike, that spread falsehoods about Mike. When I first heard that, I picked up the phone and I called Mark White because he's threatened me before. And I said, Mark, it's Bill Britt. I said, should I be waiting by the mailbox for any letters from you? And he said, no, Bill, I don't think we're going to send you any letters. But, in those documents, Mark White kept saying that he was wanting to sue people. He wanted to sue people over these leaks and statements. Never did sue anybody, did he?
Not that I know of.
Well, I mean, the sad thing is, unfortunately, for the prosecutorial team, they're trying to do the right thing, and then Mark White is known for being a lawyer that tries to try the case in the media as opposed to the courtroom.
Well, there've been some discussion about maybe asking for a gag order and, so that the prosecution couldn't say anything and that the defense couldn't say anything.
I think it's necessary.
And somebody looked at me and said, well, if they gag Mark White, what else is he going to do?
I don't like gag orders. I'll be the first to say
I
that.
don't either. We almost had a gag order on freedom of the press. We got about 2 minutes. The House had sent up a rule change for the joint committees that would have eliminated the Alabama Political Reporter and any site like us, this news site, our website, from having press credentials. 19 Republicans came together and beat that. That was a good day for democracy.
It was a good day for the Republican Party.
Yeah, it was a good day for the Republican Party.
Because the Republican Party stood up and said, you know what? Even from time to time when we're criticized for our actions, we're still going to stand up for what's right. And what's right in this instance is open access to the chambers for all news organizations, not just ones that are favorable to the majority. Kudos to the Republican Party for standing up to the 2 or 3 in leadership who were trying to push this.
And on top of that, I think a lot of that hardcore 19, they were stepping back and thinking, okay, what is this going to look like throughout the country? Because if this happened, this would have made some news waves throughout the U.S.
Well, it's just like, we talk about freedom of the press and denying you and Susan access to the floor. If you look at what happened in France recently, freedom of speech is a big deal.
Yeah, it is.
Well,
I applaud those guys, not because they did it and we benefited, but that the generations to come, they did what conservatives are supposed to do. They looked backwards at our precedent to see how to move forward. And I want to give them kudos for doing that, looking out for the country and our state. Claire, you had something on your mind?
Well, I just thought, we're on the eve of the inauguration of the governor of the state of Alabama and the new Secretary of State, the auditor, the treasurer, everybody. Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, they'll start the actual swearing-in ceremony, and festivities will begin in Montgomery. So I think it's going to be an exciting day, and it's great.
Got your ball gown out, Claire?
Well, I'm going to get it dusted off for sure.
Y'all all going? Everybody going?
I'm going to be out of town.
You're going to be out of town?
Yeah.
Well, I will give the governor your regards.
I'm sure you will, Bill.
Well, we're very proud of Governor Bentley. We wish him all the success in his second term. We're going to have to let it go right there. You've been watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. You can catch us every day at alreporter.com and every Sunday on your ABC affiliate throughout the state. Thank you for watching. God bless the United States.